Talk about an HGFL system. So after HIH, the only state in Australia that took on first resort warranty insurance for builders was Queensland. They still run a very successful, administer a very successful scheme up there. But that scheme does cut out at 3 stories, the same as the scope of our warranty insurance here. It's first resort rather than last resort, and that does make a difference, and it does actually mean that Queensland actually look at these issues slightly differently because they are a part of that insurance scheme. They're underwritten to be able to run that scheme, and they can't get insurance from the other side of the world for anything above 3 stories. So it might shift things. If it was to happen in Victoria or in other states, it could improve things, but it won't deal with the above 3 story issue. New South Wales has just introduced a program where they take 2% on high-rise to put into a fund that can be accessed for dispute resolution in the first 2 years post-occupancy. There's a lot of criticism of that, how effective it will be, whether 2%'s enough, but it's some sort of proposed solution or way forward to try to get accountability in that sector. So governments are thinking about this a lot. I think what I hope is recognised today, and particularly when DELP have the opportunity, is that there definitely is a disproportionate impost of liability on building surveyors. I hear all the time the things you're saying about insurers settling on claims when really you shouldn't be. They should be being defended. It costs a lot of money to defend. It's a commercial decision that the insurers make. You don't get a say in it. I've heard that so many times when I've spoken to many of you. It is incredibly unfair, and I do think there needs to be a redescription of the role, and it has to be done in a way that courts will be able to take notice of it. So I think we'll discuss that a lot more today, and it is connected to the insurance issue, as is this question of who pays for cladding, because at the moment these exclusions are largely focused on cladding. So if there is a policy decision made around that, that will help release that pressure valve in relation to the current scope of the exclusions that are floating around.
Okay, I think I'm getting wrapped up, so thank you so much. Look forward to engaging during the day. Thanks, Bronwyn.
Sure. I might just leave that there.
Thank you, Sue. As Sue said, she's here all day. There'll be plenty of opportunities to talk to Sue and ask questions, and that is in part what the next session is about with Bronwyn Weir, who's already on the stage, so I don't have to welcome you to the stage, but the Managing Director of Weir Legal and Consulting, and obviously the author of the Shergold Weir Report. Her reputation is well known across our industry, and Bronwyn, I'm handing over to you. I welcome you to the stage. Welcome.
Okay, so this next session is more discussion. Sue's here all day. She's committed to sitting and listening to the conversation and as she said, having the opportunity to meet many of you in the breaks. So it's not sort of the end of her listening, but we're going to explore some of these issues in more detail through a range of activities that are occurring in the program today. Can I just start by saying, yes, I co-authored Building Confidence, and one of the issues that we dealt with or spoke about in that report was this issue about the oversight. So in all jurisdictions around Australia, there is a local and state government responsibility for oversight, and in most jurisdictions where private surveying is also an option for issuing permits, there's a role and some enforcement powers given to those surveyors which vary. But what we found is right across the country, the relationship between those 3 groups is pretty toxic. They're not working together. They don't have conversations like today in terms of understanding each other's perspectives and how the oversight can work in a more coherent and collaborative way. So today I think is a fabulous step forward that Sue's taken. We actually made a specific recommendation in the report about these issues, which hopefully the states and territories will take up when we hear more about their response to the report in the coming weeks. So that is when I was approached to be involved in this, I couldn't have been more excited about it, and I think it's a long time coming, this discussion, and I hope all of you, use the opportunity and leave today feeling like this is the start of a new conversation. So we did do a pre-conference survey. It went out quite late last week, but we got about 150 responses to it. And the purpose of this was that I guess I knew, and certainly from discussing the day with a number of people over the last month or so, starting to get ideas of what kinds of issues would be raised today, it became obvious that there is so many. Where do you start? And for today to be successful, we need to try to focus on some of the key issues, the most important issues that we can talk about and hopefully make some constructive progress on. So to give you some feedback and set the tone for this session, this is for those of you who completed it. Okay, this was the top issue. PI insurance, it's already been raised. We'll continue to talk about it. It needs to be unpacked. It's a big issue. There's a whole lot of elements to it, but are there some takeaways that we can come up with by the end of the day in terms of work that can be done on that? The second top issue, so this is 66 of the 150 odd respondents put that as their top issue or in their top three. Shortage of building surveyors and inspectors. You all have to agree this is a major issue. Again, it's come up already. The third one, lack of processes where we have illegal building work. So whilst local government spends a lot of time on this issue, they also rely on private surveyors to help owners through the process of notices and orders and ultimately have work certified as compliant. So that seems to be, it's come up as one of the major issues. Adequacy of documentation was a close fourth. Again, huge issue. It came up in every report that Peter and I reviewed as part of the Weir report. So in all jurisdictions where there's been reviews and so forth, adequacy of documentation keeps coming up. And that's why we made a number of recommendations around trying to lift the standards of design, architecture and engineering as part of our recommendations. Here are some of the others. Competency of builders and trades was put up as a potential issue. Competency of surveyors. So they've come closely together in this list of importance. You know, the quality of education. So yes, when we hear that when you do get graduates coming through, they're coming out of an education system that doesn't seem to have prepared them very well. You've got an enormous amount of work to do just to get them up and going. Mandatory inspections, particularly in the commercial work or the high-rise work. You know, there's a real lack of transparency around what's going on there and how do we make sure we've got a level playing field in terms of those inspections on larger, more complex projects. Inspections by engineers and them using unregistered staff. Role of the RBS in design. Do we all have a common understanding of this important conflict of interest issue? It's part of a successful framework and part of mitigating conflict for building surveyors. And the interface with the VBA audit processes seems to be of concern. The response from the VBA when you're referring directions to fix or orders that haven't been complied with is unsatisfactory, I guess, is the issue. So we put 15 issues up. They were sort of the highest ones. There was a couple of others that had sort of less than 10. We also said, what else do you want to talk about today? What's not in that list of 15? And to be honest, a lot of those responses were very similar to the 15 or another way of expressing the 15. But there was, of course, new issues. And this has already come up today as well. We need your support. Help us be consistent when we interpret this stuff so that we can be on a level playing field. Educate us, advocate for us. And I guess that comes down to these questions around liability and so forth. Help us to be able to continue to be insured and operate. Help us when we have complex issues. The VBA has all the legal people that it needs to help them when they're going to issue an emergency order now as a new MBS on a number of projects, or when they're going to issue 205Ms to ask you to do things. But who do you have when you're trying to draft a direction to fix or a building notice and order? Help us resolve these issues when we have complexities. Help us manage conflicts of interest. Help us keep the standards up. I won't get the next job if I do everything you tell me I need to do, because there's always a surveyor who won't. Clarify our role. Make sure that people understand we're not site supervisors. So this was all coming through in the additional comments, and from our council respondents, the decline in resources and capacity in local government has been chronic, and the role of the MBS has shifted down the hierarchy in many councils, losing importance and relevance and finding it hard to do their role effectively. That's the end of my slides. There's probably other issues, but there's certainly many of these ones that I've just described that we need to unpack today. So now I want you to talk to me about these things and anything else so that we can start to put more issues on the table or get into some issues in more detail. Can I have the mics again, please? I'll take this one here and then you, Joseph. Just the gentleman behind you in the front row.
Hi, Bronwyn. Thanks. Look,
Can I get you to say your name?
Yeah, my name's Simon Machiski, building surveyors
Simon.
and building inspectors. I'm going to put this right out in the open. I've been working for myself for the last 8 years. I left Monash City Council. Now, Monash City Council engaged you when you were at Maddox to write a report on how we should conduct ourselves when we're taking enforcement action. Through my course of working for myself, I've had to take a couple of enforcement actions. Under Section 115 of the Building Act, because I'm a private building surveyor, I have to send the building notices or the orders to the VBA.
Yep.
Also, directions to fix. And I constantly get them back from the VBA saying, unenforceable, unenforceable. What's unenforceable? Now, I got trained by Monash on how to do this, and I took that with my business under your direction.
Yep.
But these are the brick walls that we hit. The same with the directions to fix. One of my building inspectors in the western suburbs failed a framework inspection. The bottom plates hanging over the concrete slabs by more than 50 mil. Beams, engineered beams, not in position. So we put that on a direction to fix. I sent that into the VBA, unenforceable. This, I think that the VBA really needs to give us some tools that we align ourselves with.
Yep, I agree. Couldn't agree more. That new direction to fix process, my view, and based on speaking to many of you, and just looking at the legislation, it has so much potential to actually raise standards because everyone needs to get a notice, everyone only has 7 days to fix, and everything goes into the VBA. So the potential of that is amazing, and we reference it in the Building Confidence Report as one way that all states and territories should look at how to support enforcement of private surveyors. But I don't think it's working quite as well as it should for the reasons that you say. And I think it comes into this issue up here, the first one that came through, and that is, how do we get supported to do our role better? If we're going to take an enforcement action, then we're co-regulating because that comes through to the VBA. So absolutely great point. And this afternoon when we go into the workshops, well, what are the answers to some of this? We need training, you've already mentioned that. You probably need some feedback on why that document was unenforceable so that you can reissue it or know for next time what it's been missing. And if you're not getting that feedback, then how do we improve and how do we make it effective? Does anyone want to comment on that? Not wanting to move past it, it's definitely something that I think we can probably make some really constructive comments on today in terms of a way forward on this to shift that behaviour. Yep. Oh, Joseph was next actually. Sorry, and then we'll come up to you. Could I have a mic down here in the second row, please?
Thank you. Joseph Jenko. The question is really about the, and I'm not sure if it's the role of the regulator or more the industry per se, and it's about the graduation of going through from the process of building inspector, building surveyor limited to building surveyor unlimited. There doesn't seem to be any sort of information out there or actually a process where it's outlined how you move from one to the other to the other. And I don't believe it's just an issue for us in the building surveying profession. I think the engineers are having the same sort of issue in how they graduate from one aspect to another to getting to registration. So I think what we need to do is we need to sort of set and spell this out. What you'll find is, yes, there is a gap at the moment, but there's, with the free for courses, the free fee, or no fees for the courses, I understand that there has been an absolute rush on those courses, and there are waiting times.
That's the TAFE sector, isn't it?
That's the TAFE sector at the moment.
Is that the appropriate place for training?
Well, another thing is that we need to understand is that we need to, and again, I'm not quite sure the role of the regulator in being involved in this sector.
Yep.
First of all is finding out the quality of the courses.
Yeah.
And secondly, once the students are out there, then how do we make sure that they have the appropriate training to move through the ranks to actually become building surveyors or unlimited? And that's been a task for, as my role as MBS in various roles has been a challenge all the time, because you've always got people that are involved in working for you, but in order to get the experience, no one can get all the experience in one organisation, and that's unfortunate, because then you then are faced with is people having to move in order to get that experience.
Yep.
So that's a real challenge for us as the industry, and really it's probably an opportunity for the regulator to actually have some input into this. But like I said, we probably also need to start looking at the courses, and not just the courses, but what happens after they graduate.
Yeah, I think the courses, the quality of teaching in these training authorities is really the longer term project. But you're right, it's about a pathway, being a clear pathway, something that is attractive, that people can see as a future career for them. There's a whole lot of work around that, and I think some of the work Sue referred to around turning up at these events, which I know ABES has been doing for a long time as well, and standing out as a potential career is part of it. So I agree, I think there's lots of work programs that need to happen around that entry point, the competence of coming in. I had a hand up halfway up there. Could you try and find that? I think competency is an issue right across the industry. Certainly we had a lot of feedback in that in the Building Confidence report. The quality of training seems to be lacking in a number of areas. I'll take your question, and then up in the middle section next, please.
Bronwyn, thanks. Jeff Mitchell. Having been the co-author of the National Accreditation Framework back in 2000 and the co-author of all the benchmarks and competencies for building surveyors, there is actually a pathway for building surveyors out there.
Great.
That is recognised. Unfortunately, I think Victoria's sort of pulled back out of the National Accreditation Framework.
Okay.
And I'm also a part-time academic, and people have to understand that at university, we're not churning out work-ready building surveyors.
Yep.
We are imparting knowledge into people to give them the basics, then they should have the ability to research and go wider. Then we rely on industry itself to prepare those people to work within the industry. Someone doesn't walk out of the university with a degree and can walk in. Certainly there's experience components that you have to have for each of the levels. But you know, again, I go back to what Victoria did back in the 2000s. You were one of the very first states that actually put a promo video together to attract young people into the industry. Now, with my roles with the AOBS over the years, I've been to countless school functions, and in the end it's pointless. The school functions are pointless because at that stage they don't even know what a building surveyor is. Mm-hmm. I'm now heavily involved with the US with the International Code Council. We're embarking on a program over there with building officials and getting into the trade schools and doing building official work in the trade schools, and that's proving quite effective to give people an awareness in the industry. So I think our focus needs to be not so much on the high schools, but get into the tech colleges and get these young kids that are actually doing carpentry and the likes in the building type field as a much better attractor to people in the industry.
You sound like the perfect person to be on some sort of working group on this issue. And it sounds like there is some good work. I know that the ABCB is doing a lot to develop content for not just the qualification courses, but also for CPD, for existing practitioners, and that's something that they've taken carriage of off the back of the Weir report because of the recommendations we made around these issues. So I think there is a lot of good work, and thank you for the sort of positive frame in which you put that there are some solutions or things we might have forgotten in the past that we need to re-look at and start to find how we work towards improving that. In the middle here.
Thanks, Bronwyn. Justin Bayard is my name. I just want to reiterate what the gentleman down the front here said, because I think the fact that the VBA has been responding with unenforceable, it's been going on now for 10, 15 years. And actually, if you speak to any building surveyor in the room, private building surveyor in the room, in fact, I'm not sure that I know anyone who's ever had an order enforced by the VBA. And fundamentally, that's undermined the enforcement of building work from the implementation of private certification.
Yes.
So I think it's really a question to Sue as to what the VBA is going to do to re-establish some support to private building surveyors in their function of putting enforcement into the quality of building work, because a lot of them have given up, because there's absolutely no point sending your building order through to the VBA because nothing happens with it.
Well, can I add to that? Not only does nothing happen, but you then become the subject of the investigation sometimes.
Indeed.
So, you know, let's call it out. I mean, I've spoken to Sue about these things that I've seen for many, many years, and she's well aware of it, and I'm sure she's committed to, you know, she sort of says, are you kidding me? So we do have somebody that's listening with fresh ears to this stuff and applying logic, not trying to perpetuate the ways of the past. But they're great points to make today. And I think one of the outcomes in the workshops this afternoon has to be, you know, what can be done? What do we need? What support do we need? How do we get a new way of working through these enforcement activities and the referrals? Up the back, I think.
Yeah, I'm one of the young building surveyors coming through the field.
Where are you? Oh, okay.
Sorry,
what was your name?
Yeah, my name's Adam.
Hi, Adam.
I'm a regional building surveyor, one of the young ones coming through the field. I've been in the industry probably 11 years. I believe the role of the MBS within the community is a crucial one for both private building surveyors, stakeholders and the community itself. Since coming into the industry, I've seen particularly regional MBSs and the departments themselves be dramatic in decline, which was one of the questions I saw up on the board before. And quite often being swallowed down the management tree under, quite often the MBS itself will be at coordinator level and have managers above them, with their decision making being swallowed under layers of management as well. What is the VBA doing to work with CEOs of local government to better promote the importance of the MBS? And how do you go about shifting them back up the tier of management?
Yeah, Sue's going to come up and answer that. And while she's doing that, one of the things I guess I would like to point out is that I think as a group, council building surveyors really pulled back from responsibility through the intervention filter and the way that they have approached their role over the last 15, 20 years. And you do have to think about that today. You know, do you want to lean into this and perform your role in an effective way and take this on, or do you want to find ways to get out of it and make yourself irrelevant? Because I think for everybody here, beyond probably the VBA who can't get out of it, there are these serious questions to be asked. what role do you want in the future, and it can't just be a limited role for the sake of it. There has to be some balance with actually contributing effectively through the group that you represent and the powers and functions that you have.